Hey everybody, my name is Rich, and this is Rich Talks Records, episode number 73, and today we are talking about Johnny Thunders in 1982, and with special emphasis and focus on the 1982 recorded but 1987 release, the live album Stations of the Cross. Everything is going to culminate in a discussion of this rather exceptional and wonderful live album. But we're going to take a winding path to get there because this is Rich Talks Records, and this is Johnny Thunders, who, all of it's complicated. So we're gonna delve into that. I have been trying to piece together this storyline as best I can. It is not easy, people. But I think I've patched something coherent, and hopefully that's going to be very enjoyable. I thought that I would like to start, like everything with Johnny Thunders, it's a winding path and it's complicated, as was my route to fandom. So I'm going to begin by telling my early impressions of Johnny Thunders, and then how those things changed over time, what my current thoughts are about him and his artistry, and then we're going to really delve into some minutia and ignore other parts of minutia, if that makes any sense. So Johnny Thunders died in 1991. This was at a time when I was pretty deep into not just the Rolling Stones, but the mythology around the Rolling Stones, or sort of, if you will, the greater concept or idea of what I perceived the Rolling Stones to be. And that ties into, this was at a time in my life where I was very interested in voodoo, and I read a bunch of books. I would go to the library and read whatever books they had or whatever information I could find on voodoo. I have subsequently not been interested in voodoo, so I want to be clear about that. But this was as far as I ever went down that road. And I was interested in it mostly as a means of protection. That appealed to me greatly at that time. And so there was the Rolling Stones, there was sort of everything. As much as I was deep into Brian Jones, I was probably equally deep into Keith Richards. And I already liked early rock and roll. My dad had these Back to the 50s compilations, so I kind of knew what I knew of that music, as much as was available to you at that time. And then kind of the other thread of it became checking out Muddy Waters, but somewhere in there, and I don't remember if this was 1990 or 1991, but Columbia Records, I think it was Columbia Records, put out the 2-disc complete recordings of Robert Johnson, which, again, speaking of my library, the library had. And that was really the first blues music I ever listened to. I mean, I liked like B.B. King's The Thrill Is Gone and a few other things, but that was when I liked Muddy Waters a lot, but Robert Johnson was like cutting into the square root of what everything was about with the Rolling Stones. And leaving aside the mythology of Robert Johnson, it fit into the larger mythology of the Rolling Stones, and it made a lot of intuitive sense to me. And I had this whole sort of romanticization of New Orleans. So when Johnny Thunders died, and he died in New Orleans, that kind of weirdly made a lot of sense to me. And I hadn't really heard his music, but I considered myself a fan simply because of what I perceived to be his connection to all of these other things. And then, like, it's a hop, skip, and a jump later on in that year that Guns N' Roses has a song dedicated to him. Like, that also made sense to me. So Kind of like with the Sex Pistols, where I didn't have any means or any way to actually hear their music. I just had this one photo of them on the inside of my locker, and I would think of them as like my favorite band. Johnny Thunders was just somebody who I really liked, just based on everything I could put together about him. Jump forward a long time, and for some reason, when I actually started buying music in earnest, I just never really got round to him, in part because I was really mystified. I remember being in a Tower Records one time and looking at the New York Dolls section, and I couldn't make heads or tails out of any of all of these either bootleg releases or releases of semi-dubious legality, et cetera, live stuff, bits of recording sessions from here and there. Like, all of it was just, again, kind of mystifying to me. There were actually 2 record stores that were in a very expensive town adjacent to around here that actually had loads of Thunders bootleg releases. And I would flip through them sometimes. I mean, I remember the TH section of the T's was like that many records. It was bonkers, totally bananas. And I would flip through it and I was like, I don't know what the hell any of this stuff is. And I remember one time realizing that there were at least 2 titles in there that were the same contents that were just released under different titles with different album covers. And I remember thinking, dear God, what the hell is this? This is really needlessly complicated. It really wasn't until this was a compilation or a sampler CD that came with Mojo Magazine, and it was from March of 2003. So this would have been, I think, April of 2003. And on here was Johnny Thunders and the Heartbreakers, their version of Chinese Rocks. And this is where I became a fan. This truly, like the riff of the Stooges' "I Gotta Write," it kicked like a fucking mule. That riff, I was so completely and totally knocked out by that riff. The fact that the song was as dark and compelling as it was, and as tragic and knowingly tragic as it was hugely, hugely compelling. And that was it. I was in. So the first thing that I ever got by Johnny Thunders was this, a release that is considered, anathema, a sacrilege to Thunders and I guess Dolls purists. This is LAMF Revisited. It is the 1984 remix that Johnny Thunders did, and of the classic LAMF album. This was on, what is it on? Earmark? Is that what it's called? Yeah, Earmark Records via Get Back. And I didn't know the difference. I knew that it had a complicated release history from the entries in Please Kill Me, but that was all that I knew. And all I knew was this. I thought the drums sounded a little weird, and I did think that the drums sounded a little 80s, but that was about it. I became completely obsessed with this record, and I remember sitting in my apartment blaring this and just having this thought or feeling of like, this is one of the greatest rock and roll records ever made. This thing is unbelievable. And so this was my exposure to the great rock and roll, all-time rock and roll masterpiece that is LAMF. This sequence, I loved it. I was into it, and into it very, very hard. And that was where that was really where I became a fan. The Dolls actually, for me, came a little bit after that. And I had bought the first album, I don't know, late 90s, early 2000s. And I thought it was cool, but I didn't really like Todd Rundgren's production on it. I didn't really like the mix. I thought it was, and I think some people have complained about that over the years. I eventually came to love that album. I eventually came to think that the first Dolls album is absolutely a masterpiece. Full stop, no qualifications, no, no dashes, pauses, ellipses, or commas involved. And, but my understanding of the Dolls, and I've referenced this before, and at some point I will talk about this in greater detail, but was when this came out, All Dolled Up, which was shot by Bob Gruen and his ex-wife. What year is this from? This is... Does it even say? What the hell year is this? Well, whatever the hell year this came out in was the thing that, like, absolutely positively cemented... I can't believe there's not a date on it. It's going to irritate me now. But this is what absolutely positively cemented my fandom of the New York Dolls. And I think 2005, there we go. I knew it had to be in here somewhere. And the live footage on here is so unbelievably awesome and so unbelievably white hot. And seeing Johnny Thunders in full form and the way that he physically played the guitar, let alone the sounds he's making and the tones and everything, but just the actual way that he played and really the power and force of the right hand. It is a fucking magical right hand, as good as Richie Havens, or I forget which one of the Everly brothers, Don or Phil, but is it? I don't remember. But there are magical right hands in the history of rock and roll guitar playing, and Johnny's is one of them. The fact that Johnny would turn nearly every downstroke into a punch that he would throw at the audience and like stare at them. And then just the sheer perversity of that, given the way that they were dressed, and then contrasted against the knowing camp of David Johansen and the sort of nudge and a wink and one step removed of David Johansen. I was really into it. Also, and I was already into it via LAMF, but the All Dolled Up DVD is where I got really into the drumming genius of Jerry Nolan. And Jerry Nolan became, and still is, of course, one of my favorite drummers of all time. And those two guys together, that's no disrespect. I mean, obviously, David Johansen's very important. Arthur Kane, great. Sylvain is the truly the unsung secret weapon of the Dolls and did a lot. But for me, especially at that point, musically, it is Jerry Nolan and Johnny Thunders, and the fucking mind and spirit meld of that partnership, that, oh my God, like that is a word I've been using a lot lately. It is deeply satisfying. Just to briefly go backwards, I am going to, for the first and probably only time ever, I'm going to positively reference the 1992 Rolling Stone album guide, because I think it was written by Paul Evans. I think the PE is Paul Evans, but this was written, not long after Thunders died, and I am actually going to read this because I feel like this kind of neatly sums up Johnny Thunders. Also, I have to say, I'll give a positive about the 1992 Rolling Stone album guide, but I will also give a negative, because when Rolling Stone didn't know what the hell to do with somebody, I don't know if you can see that, they would just give it 3 stars. And as you can see from this highly selected discography, it's woeful, and there are many things missing. So take a good long look at this nonsense. But I will read the beginning of this entry because I think it's by Paul Evans. I'm not going to bother to look that up because it's the Rolling Stone album guide, so I don't want to be too respectful here. But I feel like this is actually really good writing. It's effective writing for one of the only times in here. And it touches upon what we're going to be touching upon throughout the rest of this video. So it all neatly coincides, I guess. In a perversely brilliant casting maneuver, filmmaker Lech Kowalski picked Johnny Thunders to play Jesus in a 1992 documentary on New York junkie life. In actuality, Thunders was a Jesus noir, a trashy Jean Genet saint, his hard-fated life a furious, unfocused rebellion. Never more than a cult figure, he died in 1991, ready-made for myth, the last of the hell-bent, rock and roll true believers. Even when, and this is where it gets really good, even when Thunders started out in the 70s, that faith was anachronistic. In the New York Dolls, playing Keith Richards to David Johansen's Jagger, the guitarist was trapped between two forms of parody: glitter, brackets, which inflated basic rock and roll, end brackets, and punk, brackets, which deflated it, end brackets. Thunders was instrumental in making the waters semi-safe for the Sex Pistols, the Dead Boys, and the like, but his own playing, however sloppy, contained no irony. He rocked straight out of Chuck Berry. The zeitgeist, though, demanded caricature, and Thunders soon became a pathetic one, a kamikaze sadder than Sid Vicious, because Thunders had real talent. I think that's a little bit unfair to poor old Sid, but you get the basic idea that, and that sort of leads into the next part of this, is in my early Thunders fandom, really sort of fell victim to what you see in the Orson Welles fandom, which is to say, this outcast, this loner, this true exile on Main Street, wandered about the globe for, Johnny for about 10 years, Orson for like 30, and they just went around when they could scrape together the resources, dropping these little gems, these masterpieces, and then sadly misbegotten or misunderstood fragments that came to nothing. And I think that's wrong in both cases. With Orson, I think the forces that he was fighting were much more external. I don't think that was... And they just didn't respect or understand his artistic process or his creative process. And so I think with Orson Welles, the fight is real. But it does wind up in how many cuts are there of Mr. Arkadin? There's like 8 or 9. There's not even a real name for the movie. There's Confidential Report. With Thunders, of course, obviously, it was mostly internal. And I think that my tendency to sort of act as if he existed like dropping these gems or could have been gems. As the years have gone by, I have focused that down to a more, I think, rational belief, which is I think that Johnny Thunders in his lifetime made 3 masterpieces. But like Brian Geisen, I think that, and I think it was the Chris O'Leary guy who talked about why Brian Geisen didn't have as much, why he wasn't as revered as a William Burroughs. I think the thing with Thunders is, even with the 3 masterpieces, at least 2 of them sort of have asterisks on them or next to them. And so it's harder to discern the genius. And each of his masterpieces, so that obviously would be the 1973 debut album by the New York Dolls, of course. 77s, I think. LAMF. This is the deluxe version that has like 80,000 of the different mixes on it. And then, of course, the 1978 solo album, So Alone, an absolutely incredible record. But following each of these, there are a series of could-have-beens and misbegotten sort of... You go down the rabbit hole very quickly. So the second New York Dolls album, outside of a couple true masterpieces on an album that isn't, namely Who Are the Mystery Girls, and especially Human Being, which I think is probably their single greatest studio recording. You quickly fall down the rabbit hole and wind up with things like this, the Red Patent Leather live recordings, and there's some fascinating live footage of this lineup, or this version of the band, not lineup, but version of the band out on YouTube, but like the sound is like really, really wretched. There's some really cool Too Much Too Soon era footage on and some red patent leather footage on the Bob Gruen All Dialed Up release. Again, but it doesn't come to anything. The same thing with the Heartbreakers, and it took forever to get that record. It didn't. It's like Mr. Arkadin. It didn't really have a proper mix until it's and it's there's part of it kind of like Raw Power that's a little bit forever going to be in the ether. But the Heartbreakers never made another album, but you have things like this, the Live at Max's Kansas City 1979, which any devotee is going to tell you is an absolutely incredible live album. And then, following So Alone, you get to things like the rest of his solo career, and we are going to be focusing primarily on 1982. But did Johnny have another masterpiece in him? Maybe. I think that if he could have gotten it together, if he maybe did another trip to Hazelden and was able to focus, maybe his dream New Orleans album, which he was attempting to make, did he have leukemia? I think that was confirmed by the autopsy that he did in fact have leukemia. He did not have AIDS, as had been rumored. Was he murdered? Maybe, but he was also a very, very sick man, and the substance abuse did not help. Was he on the verge, though, of a creative renaissance? The Sticks and Stones sessions that are out there would suggest yes, because he had written a strong repertoire of new material. So maybe he was on the verge of some sort of creative rebirth. What would that have led to? Would he have, I don't know, gotten the possibility of opening for Guns N' Roses on the Use Your Illusion tour, and then he blows it after 3 or 4 gigs? Well, who knows what the future of that beholds? And I think his body was just going to give out on him anyway, because he lived fucking dangerously, and the self-abuse was major. This is it's no dog and pony show here. So, and it is a human tragedy. It is a human tragedy. And so I don't want to portray it like Thunders just went around dropping masterpieces that the world just couldn't understand, or these mean, big bad old record companies just couldn't wait him out. I think he unfortunately was, there was whatever there was in him that just sort of couldn't get it over the line. I think sometimes that, and I'm going to be talking about the plethora of 1982, the different recordings and all the releases that led to. There's a lot of them. I'll be parsing all of that out for you. But I think that this period of time, 82 going into 83, is the closest that he could have come to actually producing a masterpiece. I think that this should have been the proper follow-up to So Alone. It should have been the real next development of his creativity and his songwriting and him as a band leader. I think that what he later did with the Oddballs, leading into what is known as Sticks and Stones, could have been another phase. And you sort of have to parse. You have to parse all of those things out. And also I think he just was fighting substance abuse, and he was eternally fighting himself, sadly and unfortunately. But I think that this is the closest he came. And I think sometimes, even if there is not a grand masterpiece at the end of creating a body of work, that doesn't necessarily negate personally my favorite example of that would be Bob Dylan's Infidels. The end result of the album is certainly flawed, and there were flaws made, especially sort of in the fourth quarter, kind of getting that one over the music. Contrasting sports metaphors, getting that one over the finish line. But you would be foolish to listen to all the whole sessionography and the bootlegs and everything and come away with any thought other than that period of his work cumulatively, outside of the flawed final record, is a masterpiece. I think in a different sort of way, you could maybe make the case for all of the recording sessions for McCartney's Red Rose Speedway. When you look at all of that whole body of songs, that's a fascinating body of songs. That's a fascinating little body of work that he made there. And you can take issue with how the final album turned out. Check out the great Edmund Canistracci's recent Paul McCartney video for further thoughts. His thoughts parallel mine pretty neatly. But all of that is a body of work. If you just listen to sort of everything, it is deeply impressive. And I think that what Johnny was up to in 1982 is deeply impressive. We will now talk about what Johnny was up to in 1982. We will now set the scene. So the Johnny Thunders of 1982 is back in New York. Marcia Resnick let him stay at her place. And he had been living in Detroit, or suburban Detroit, but he was now broken up with his wife, Julie. That appears to have been an unbelievably fraught relationship. But Johnny had sold his guitars because of substance abuse reasons, of course. And he was back in New York, and he is effectively rebuilding himself. 1981 and 1982 press articles about him are uniformly unfavorable, condescending, mocking, dismissive, especially the English press, and slightly sort of bemused. Look at this sad, this person really had it going, and the man that sparked the punk revolution. Look at him now, and that was kind of the general tone. So largely negative, and interestingly, in a couple articles, constant comparisons to David Johansen, painting David Johansen as something of the winner and Johnny Thunders as something of the loser. Also interesting is the fact that Sylvain is painted also as a sort of a co-winner, and they're making their way in the music industry proper, and maybe they haven't sold a ton of records, but they're going to get there. And by golly, look at the music they're making now. I will say the David Johansen solo music is very, very strong. I think kind of like the early solo career of Tom Verlaine. I think it is, the praise is, and I'm fans of both of these guys, so I want to be clear, but slightly inflated. They were critics' favorites. But that doesn't, David Johansen's song Donna is an absolute all-time classic. And also from that perspective, I completely understand why you would see, if you're not really looking at what Thunders is doing comparatively against Johansen and Sylvain, it's not outrageous. What is interesting, is the Dolls always sort of remained they were always sort of in each other's orbit. And it's interesting because even in this period, when Johnny is playing shows, at least at one of them, David Johansen is there checking it out, watching the entire thing. I find that absolutely fascinating. But in an interview with Barney Hoskins, who is pretty condescending and pretty smug about Johnny Thunders, Johnny is remarkably consistent in a lot of his responses in interviews around this time and what his aims were. And I think on some level, I appreciate, I don't know how to phrase this, I appreciate the earnestness with which Johnny says things. When that one Swedish film crew is filming him for the Drugs and Rock special, that's on YouTube, I'll be linking to that. He's very earnest in his aims, but to Barney Hoskins, he says, "I play rock and roll. It's just a form of making kids happy, making kids dance, That's all I set out to do." And I think that that's very true. Barney Hoskins pushes him and says, "Oh, but you're not really making any music. Aren't you letting yourself down?" And Johnny notes, "I just need a record deal. I have plenty of material for a new record." This is all, by the way, Barney Hoskins phonetically spells it out in a New York accent, so the word new is N-O-O. "I just need to find somebody I can trust. A lot of people are scared of me, scared of my reputation, and we just recorded an EP in New York. Jimmy Miller producing. The single's called In Cold Blood. There's one called Diary of a Lover. one called Hoodoo Voodoo, and one called You're Just Another Girl. It's Jerry Nolan, Walter Lure, and myself. I play bass and guitar on it. And then he asks Barney Hoskins if he has a couple of cigarettes. Enter the kind of the two most important figures around this time. Walter Lure and Jerry Nolan sort of come and go, as would become the pattern for the next few years. But there are two kind of important people who come in to the Johnny Thunders story at this time. So enter Christopher Gehrke, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, who becomes his manager, has Johnny gigging. You know, Johnny is doing recording sessions as early as January of 1982. Johnny's doing gigs by January of 82, and has Johnny playing sort of coherently. And, you know, he's back in the studio, and he's working, and as noted, he's working with Jimmy fucking Miller. Interestingly, for all of the Stones connections with Jimmy Miller, one of the things that appealed to Thunders most about Jimmy Miller is actually his production on the Traffic's debut album, Mr. Fantasy. Truly a masterpiece and an absolutely incredible album. And that's actually what Johnny was why Johnny was really excited to work with him, because of his production work with Traffic. I love that. I think that's really, really cool. But Christopher Gehrke has Johnny in the studio. He has Johnny on the road. Things are starting to happen. The ball's moving. Get the ball rolling. And the other thing, though, about Christopher Gehrke is that Christopher Gehrke is also basically his drug dealer. Christopher Gehrke apparently is moving product like a little fucking Pablo Escobar Jr. So, you know, there's that, and there's the ramifications of that, and there's everything that comes with that. But for a few years, the union actually kind of sort of worked. And then obviously we have enter the story. There's Jimmy Miller, who is going to come and kind of bounce in and bounce out of this. We'll be getting to that. But the other person who's going to play a major role in this year is filmmaker Lech Kowalski. Lech? I don't know. Lech. I'm saying Lech, goddammit. That's what I'm going with. So, the original idea was that Lech Kowalski was going to make a film called Gringo. Gringo comes and goes, and it is then repurposed into the film Stations of the Cross, which was going to combine documentary and staged, film footage, right? On the Stations of the Cross live album, which was, Lech Kowalski noted, was the soundtrack, like he straight up says, it is the soundtrack to the film. And I'll talk about this record in a little bit. But he refers to it, and he refers to it in the liner notes here. So this is the release from 1991, the vinyl release of it from 1991. But he refers to this as the soundtrack to the film. There is on here spoken word recordings from dialogue from the film. The film never got completed. So Gringo becomes Stations of the Cross. Stations of the Cross doesn't ever get filmed. At some point, he decides to just make a documentary about Thunders, which was called Story of a Junkie. And Story of a Junkie goes unfinished, and eventually in 1991 gets repurposed into the documentary Born to Lose. Like everything with Johnny Thunders, Born to Lose apparently has multiple cuts that are out there. There's a 2-hour, 2-minute cut that's on YouTube. I'll link to that. Some of it's fascinating. Some of it's incredibly frustrating and kind of annoying. It's a fucking strange one. So, as with his records, his Lech Kowalski's ability to make a film, a proper film, also never really materializes. Unfortunately, it is pretty maddening. Follow-up, 4 years after So Alone, the follow-up to In Cold Blood is released as 1980. The follow-up to So Alone is released as 1982's In Cold Blood. I do not have a version of the 1982 release. It is, however, what is out on YouTube, so you can go listen to that yourself. I will be talking about it. What I have is the 2015 Easy Action release. And the 2015 Easy Action release does a very good job of rounding up the studio material from this time, and with the best mixes that you can possibly hear of this material. We are just going to start running through the 1982 recording sessions. Then we'll talk about some of the live stuff, and again, it will culminate in talking about this. Again, 1987's Stations of the Cross. Love it. This is as close to album talk as we're going to get here. So, in January of 1982, Johnny Thunders entered Sound Studio in Revere, Massachusetts, and recorded 6 songs. These are absolutely exceptional. And I will say that I think that not thinking about this in album terms is very helpful, because I think that Johnny is, as much as people identify with the Keith Richards thing, I think Johnny really is closer in a lot of ways to a blues artist, or in some ways almost like a folk artist, where it's more about repertoire, and as opposed to specifically writing an album of songs. There were the songs that were sort of in the repertoire at the time, and it's just this body of songs, this sort of amorphous, constantly shape-shifting repertoire of songs that he would just pull from. And it is more like blues music, where songs bleed into each other, songs cut off, another one start. He sings one set of lyrics over chords from another song, all of that. It all constantly, it's just constantly fucking shape-shifting. So, but these are phenomenal recording sessions. I could not find this up on YouTube. I don't know if it's on other streaming services. I don't really mess around with streaming services. But again, this Easy Action version of this, it is available on Amazon. I can say that. So I think that I would strongly recommend checking this out, because I think that this is some of the best studio material that Johnny Thunders ever recorded. So this is exceptional stuff. This is really beautiful stuff. This has, in its own way, the power of a Robert Johnson or a Son House or a Blind Willie McTell. I mean, this is he's a modern blues artist, you know. So it opens with a version of one of his greatest songs, You Can't Put Your Arms Around a Memory. It's a very straightforward version. But what is interesting about this is 2 things. Johnny's voice is very high, wavering, the high and lonesome sound. There's probably some Hank Williams in there, I suppose. Intensely personal, intensely vulnerable, and it's blues music. It's soul music. I mean, this is the sound. This is the sound of a man desperate for connection, and his acoustic music, I think, is as moving as his electric guitar stuff, which we'll be talking about, trust me. But You Can't Put Your Arms Around a Memory. It's a phenomenal song. Someday when I review So Alone, we'll talk more about that. Other than this is a beautiful reading of it. There are no, also like a blues artist or a folk artist, there are no definitives with Johnny, because there's so many versions of so many of the songs. And you could say that this is the definitive version of this song. It is stunning in its intimacy and vulnerability. It is gorgeous. From there, we go into She's So Untouchable. And She's So Untouchable is kind of a great little gem of a song. And part of what I love about it is, you know, Johnny's sort of mix and match aesthetic, which was the Dolls' fashion aesthetic, but also their musical aesthetic. The chords in the chorus borrow the verse chords from the Turtles' Happy Together. I love it. I love that he does that, but it's not with the nudge and the wink that David Johansen would have brought to it. And that's no knock on Johansen. I love him, but you know what I mean? There's this weird earnestness and straightforwardness to Johnny plain spoken reality. And it's just a beautiful, quiet little song. And, stolen private moments, just straight from the center of the man's mind and from the center of his very being. From there, we get what could be maybe the single best thing on here, the absolutely stunning version of Ask Me No Questions. Oh my God, it's really gorgeous. I mean, first of all, it's such a phenomenal song and such a well-written song. And that's one of the other things that I love about Johnny's songwriting is it's all sturdy parts as much as things fly around in the live setting. The songs are just really, really, really sturdy and made of good, solid components. And the expressiveness of his singing voice, it's amazing that, I mean, think about it. In the Dolls, I know he would sing the odd number or whatever, but, he became a proper frontman. He became a proper singer, a weird frontman, a wired, angry, little confrontational, fucking brutal. True, he's the real Italian stallion. But he's a proper. Beyond anything else, he's a proper singer. He's a proper songwriter. And I think also, given his propensity for mixing and matching material and putting songs in different guises and performing them, some people would be a little bit more cynical or a little less generous and would maybe put it down to, oh, he hadn't written more material. Oh, he's so strung out. Oh, what a sad junkie. What a sad druggy tale. But Johnny had such propensity for doing this and for recasting songs. I think you have to consider it an aesthetic decision. And you have to consider it just part of what he was as a music maker and as a songwriter and as just a musical thinker. And you have to just sort of take the songs. You can't just get hung up on this song is from this album. Again, it's about this ever-expanding and, again, constantly shape-shifting repertoire of songs, body of songs. Ask Me No Questions is absolutely gorgeous. If you want to consider this the definitive version of this song, hey, here you go. It's incredibly gorgeous. From there we go into Hurt Me. Great song. Winds up being, this session I think really paves the way for what he records the next year for the Hurt Me all acoustic solo album. This is a beautiful version of it. It's, raw, emotional stuff, vulnerable, incredibly vulnerable. And it's these are tough songs that get down to brass tacks. And you can look at the psychological motivations in there and you can just kind of dig forever in that. Then we get a very straightforward and really beautifully sung and deeply felt version of the Sid Vicious lament "Sad Vacation," which is great. And I actually like the way he sings this better than how he would with the full band arrangement. I love this. I love this version of it. I think it's fantastic. Unfortunately, it doesn't continue. It's not a full reading of the song because he immediately just jumps and goes into another song. One of his absolute masterpieces, one of my favorite songs of all time. I'm not going to talk about it too much here because, again, someday when I go through LAMF... Oh, that's the other thing I should say, is with doing a Johnny Thunders video, like Lou Reed, like Iggy Pop, like John Lydon, and my recent John Lennon video, Johnny Thunders is now going to be one of the recurring characters on this channel. So this is the first Thunders video, but it's going to be the first of many. So as the channel goes along and it goes on its weird little own fucking non-linear rambling path, we're introducing yet another theme, variation of the theme. And the theme are these different recurring characters, if that makes any goddamn sense, which it doesn't really, but you get what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. I'm like fucking Pootie Tang. You might not know what I'm saying, but you know what I meant. God damn it. So anyway, I'm like Pootie Tang for so many reasons. But It's Not Enough is one of my favorite songs of all time. I think it's one of the most perfectly written songs of all time. Someday I will do the hardcore deep dive on that song because I have so much that I could say about it. But this is a very, very beautiful version of it. If you aren't going to have the Heartbreakers playing it, and I think is it Walter Lure who does the solo on that song, which is like one of the greatest guitar solos of all time, truly, truly. But Johnny's singing of it, I mean, my God, it's just such a masterpiece. But this is a beautiful version of it. It's such a perfect song, and he delivers it so perfectly. So if you aren't going to get the great, nice, like cool, beautiful, vulnerable solo reading of Sad Vacation, and where it's very clearly felt, deeply felt, him going into It's Not Enough, but also then as a juxtaposition of Sad Vacation to It's Not Enough. What more could be said for poor Sid than It's Not Enough? Sad Vacation might be the lament for or to Sid, but It's Not Enough is the song like of the psychology and spirit of fucking Sid. So pretty amazing. Then we get Some Hearts, again another beautiful display of Johnny's rhythm playing, like, and just that fucking incredible right hand. God bless him. Beautiful song, and then we get an interesting diversion. We get him doing Subway Train, and especially those verses, and especially On This Day in Revere, Massachusetts, with that high, beautiful, wavering voice that's just so full of emotion. And just so, in its own little way, just so beautifully expressive. Just what a fantastic reading of the song. But that immediately goes into I'm a Boy, I'm a Girl, and which is again sort of an interesting extrapolation from the concept of Subway Train, Hurt, Poison, and Condemned, and it goes into that. I mean, these are tough, boiled down songs. Delivered in a highly, highly emotional, deeply felt way. It's just gorgeous. So this acoustic session, I mean, unbelievable stuff. I cannot recommend these recordings enough. So moving right along. In March of 1982, at Euphoria Sound Studio in Revere, Massachusetts. I said it wrong when I was talking about the January sessions. With producer Jimmy Miller in tow. You might have heard of him. He worked with the Rolling Stones. He did some really important rock and roll records. He's something of a genius. As Keith noted, though, he was one of the people who really did get churned up by the Stones machine. Entered a lion, came out a lamb, and there are the stories, I don't know if they are apocryphal or not, that he spent most of the sessions for Goat's Head Soup carving a swastika with a knife into the mixing board. I don't know if that's true, but it makes for a tragic rock and roll tale, does it not? But at any rate, here he is with Johnny Thunders. They're in Massachusetts. And these sessions are interesting because they have Billy Rogers on drums and Walter Lure, God bless him. Really, Sylvain is great and really important. Walter Lure is really great, really, really important. Walter Lure does so much in all of this. It's kind of funny, like, that Johnny would form these musical relationships with people, and as much as he's like of one mind with Jerry Nolan, he gets of one mind with Walter Lure at the same time, and Johnny's on bass, so Johnny is playing both guitar and bass, and he's really, really good at it. So again, seek this out because the mixes on this are really, really good. So it opens with Johnny's cover of Green Onions. And Green Onions, it's a great cover. It's really, really cool. I think that some of the live versions from around this time start to eclipse it in terms of when it like really coheres and really, really comes together. But this is a great version. And as much as it maybe pokes around a little bit here and there in search of direction, when it coheres, it gives you the sense that they know exactly what they're doing, and they're just sort of bringing it down, biding their time to like really come back in and hit that riff that much harder. Over the course of 1982, Green Onions morphs into the quasi-original Who Needs Girls? So we'll be getting to that when the time comes. But then we have an alternate take of one of Johnny's greatest songs, and that is Diary of a Lover. I think the definitive version of that, and we might as well touch upon this thing, shows up, and we'll get to this, but it's different than the version that is on here, the Too Much Junkie Business compilation, also known here, and we'll be talking about this, the new Too Much Junkie Business compilation. I'll be making sense out of this, because it took me forever to make sense out of this, so damn it, I'm gonna hopefully help you, the nascent and perhaps very confused Johnny Thunders fan, out. So Diary of a Lover, though, I love this version. The verses come and go a little bit, but it is, again, very, very heartfelt. There is something of an extra verse that I think fleshes out the story a little bit more, and I really love it. I don't know that I would necessarily say that this is the definitive take, but if you're going to go into the world of alternate takes, this is a really, really damn strong one, and I absolutely love it. Speaking of acoustic songs, one that actually saw the light of day on the original In Cold Blood release, and that is the acoustic number Look in My Eyes. I think this is the only take of it that exists, if I'm not mistaken. That's the other thing is, usually here at Rich Talks Records, I'm pretty factually accurate, but like Johnny Thunders, things are going to sort of come and go here. So kind of like with the Beach Boulevard compilation, I wasn't here. I'm not an expert. If you do know, please leave comments. Please sort things out. Tell me where I'm wrong. The Johnny Thunders canon is so goddamn confusing, and things overlap with so many other things. So if I am putting a foot wrong, I would kindly request that you just throw it down in the comments and say, actually, blah, blah, blah. Like, I and the viewers would appreciate that. So, but Look in My Eyes is an amazing song. And Johnny does this really great, weird, acoustic, interruptive device where it just sounds like he's like bending the guitar. It's really, really, really cool. And what a weird left field thing to do. I absolutely love it. But a gorgeous song. His voice still very much has the quality that it did in the January sessions, and would be a perfect complement to that. You could take Look in My Eyes, you could very easily make one hell of an EP or an album side out of that. You could have a half acoustic, half electric album out of this that, my God, would be really, really incredible. There is a masterpiece to be stitched together here. And what I would like to encourage is for you out there to go forth and attempt to do that. I think that would be fun, as opposed to me just saying, like, this is what I think the sequence should be. So Look in My Eyes is an incredibly beautiful song, and I absolutely love the performance of it. Again, it is just so deeply fucking soulful. Magnificent. And then we jump ahead to Endless Party, which winds up on the Que Sera Sera album. That's probably the definitive version, because it's like a far more coherent, understandable version of the song. This is a lot looser, a lot messier. Also, Joe Mazzari, remember the name, is here on guitar. Walter Lure is not present. And we have Simon Ritt joining in on acoustic guitar, but more importantly, harmonica, and takes the solo to great effect. Endless Party, this recording of it is loose, it's raw, it's still pretty lo-fi, but it's pretty awesome and rockin'. Yes, obviously the Que Sera Sera version is far better in the sense that it's like a far more coherent studio recording. But what this gets into, and when I was talking about how the cumulative of this repertoire adds up to a masterpiece, I think had this been put out, if this was on the electric side of a prospective 1982 Johnny Thunders album, what you see in terms of artistic development and the shape-shifting of like the Green Onions cover, etc., is akin to, and some people might bristle at this comparison, but I don't, because I'm a big fan. But and this group will be coming up again in this video for reasons that are, I think, somewhat humorous. The transition to Aerosmith's Draw the Line. I think that, Toys in the Attic and Rocks are actually highly, highly organized, produced records that portray messiness and stonesiness, but they're actually far more Beatles-esque in terms of the meticulous construction of them, and they are hyper-produced. I think those are unbelievably perfectly realized albums, and I think that Jack Douglas's production on those records is some of the greatest album production in the entire history of rock and roll. Jack Douglas recently passed away. May he rest in peace. Like, those are visionary albums in terms of their production. I mean, incredible. And he was their George Martin. But Draw the Line is actually what the Aerosmith sort of portrayed themselves as. It actually is the loose, more jam-based Rolling Stones, process of, attrition, sort of songs via a process of attrition, and it is not as meticulously constructed. And the loose, jammy power of these 1982 recordings, when heard properly in good mixes, I love it, and I think it's really, really powerful. So, on one hand, yes, and Johnny re-recorded songs a lot, so theoretically, yes, you could have a 1982, this could be on the electric side, and yes, then you could have the more legible, coherent version, because it's a great song. It's such a fun, great rock and roll song. You can put that on Que Sera Sera. You can have both. We're Americans, goddammit. We're free. You can have both. Why not both? That's right. So anyway, moving right along. So September 1982, Johnny Thunders is back in the studio with Jimmy Miller. And you might say, well, why was there a break in the sessions? Well, it's because Johnny got invited to go to Sweden. Johnny goes to Sweden, causes all sorts of havoc on a family television show. I will be linking to that performance. It is one of the great sort of pieces of performance art that you're ever going to see. It's pretty unbelievable. His stage raps alone are worth their weight in gold. Yeah, and then he gets busted in the airport. It's and does gigging in London. It is during the English shows that Johnny already obviously had the song In Cold Blood, but when Johnny starts adding his cover of The Doors' 5 to 1, but like the Green Onions cover or even Pipeline, it's a shape-shifted Johnny Thunders cover / original. I mean, he truly makes it his own. So, is Led Zeppelin's In My Time of Dying a cover by the time they're done with it? You know what I mean? Is it not just something else? And sometimes I think certain radical reinterpretations of material make songwriting copyright laws a little absurd. And Johnny's rearrangement of 5 to 1 is fucking amazing. So anyway, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the second round of sessions with Jimmy Miller. Johnny's affect at this time is his behavior in the studio is interesting because Steve Lillywhite, when they did So Alone, for some reason was able to sort of get Johnny to bear down and focus. Jimmy Miller, who had his own problems, and I forget who said it, but somebody said that Jimmy Miller, if anything, was actually in worse shape even than Johnny was at this time. But Johnny sort of was hyperactive to a fault. But I mean, he was hyperactive on stage too, but he would, start to record. He would start to record guitar. They would get everything set up. He'd play for like a minute and not want to do that. Then he'd want to do vocals. Then he would go to the bathroom for a little bit and come out and then only want to record acoustic stuff and then give up on that and only want to record bass tracks. So he was hard to keep up with, a little Bob Dylan-esque in his inability for the engineers to mic him properly and get him set up, and nobody to sort of bring this thing in for a landing. And he wasn't as not erratic, but as all over the place as Bob can be in his process. Bob is ultimately far more not just self-disciplined but self-directed than Johnny. But we get into kind of the meat of the songs with Jimmy Miller. So things open. So we at these sessions we have the mysterious Lewis on bass. I don't know who Lewis is. If you know, please let me know. I don't have the slightest idea who Lewis is. But we've got Walter Lure back, and we've got the great Jerry Nolan on drums, and thank God for that. Whoever Lewis is, though, the first song, Hoodoo Voodoo, is tearing it up. And if you want to talk about more jam-based, or another example, not the funk and disco aspects of it, but the just the open-ended jamminess of the Stones' Black and Blue, is maybe another good point of comparison. Hoodoo Voodoo is awesome. And again, I really want to stress the easy action mixes. This is what you want to go with. This is where the music really comes alive. This is maybe not as dramatic of a salvage mission as to what James Williams did with Kill City on the reissue of Kill City, but this opens the music up, and I'm going to talk about that. But Hoodoo Voodoo is just a beautiful, explosive, jam-based, Bo Diddley-based, like, great burst of rock and roll energy and expressiveness. It's awesome. And Lewis is tearing it up on the bass, whoever the hell he is. Is that Johnny? Maybe, I don't know. But it is fantastic. We then get the definitive version, the definitive studio version of In Cold Blood, a song that Johnny claims to have drawn inspiration from the Truman Capote novel. A great, slinky, slightly menacing, sort of post-rockabilly, Crampsian lurch of a song that Johnny, I love his lyrics. I love his sort of taunting lyrics, and it's great. It's great. It's super believable. It feels menacing, and there's atmosphere and depth to this, and I really love it as a performance. And Jerry Nolan holds it down because he's one of the greatest drummers in the entire history of rock and roll. And I have really, really come to love the song In Cold Blood. It's fantastic. Then we get Just Another Girl, which is cool and kind of a deranged rock and roll tango. This version is the version that you probably have heard if you've heard this. I think it's really, really good. It's a perfectly good song. It fares much better live. But again, this sort of open-ended jam-based songwriting, and not super tied into tight arrangements and verses and choruses. This is probably the ultimate example of it. And then we get the definitive version of Diary of a Lover. This is the version, I think. There's humor, there's wistfulness and melancholy. And then there's Johnny getting sort of nasty. Like it ties all these different strands of his personality into one song. And Johnny has all of that 50s brill building music in his heart and soul. And as much as you want to talk about the Rolling Stones or whatever, he was equally the Shangri-Las, Shadow Morton, brill building. Like, that's as much a part of the DNA, and I think that that's something that doesn't really get understood about him, and his ability to just write a classic 50s song that could never have ever been recorded in the 50s, is perfect. But the thing that ties it all together, the fulcrum of the entire thing, and talk about vulnerability, is just even though I'm still fortunate, just getting to know her, and this is such a line, this is such a killer line, just getting to makes me remember things I forget. Fuck, what a kind of a, I don't know, like a startling admission, both in the immediate, right, context of his life, but and then in the longer emotional arc of a man's life, It makes me remember things I forget. Oh, that's a fucking line. And the emotional directness. Oh, God, he's so good at it. And just the way he sings this beautifully. I love Johnny as a singer. And I'm going to say, I don't want to pit these two guys next to each other because they're very different in a lot of ways, and their life circumstances are completely different. But Johnny, okay, I'm just going to say, Johnny runs rings around Keith as a singer. Okay, there, I said it. I don't want to get too, but really, Johnny could really deliver the goods as a singer. Like, I love this. You sort of can't realistically have Keith without Mick, but I feel like I'm diminishing David Johansen in all of this. I mean, I fucking love David Johansen, okay? But Johnny exists without David Johansen in a way that Keith could never exist without Mick Jagger. Just saying. I don't know what that makes, and also, I think the comparison more to Chuck Berry. I think Johnny is more Chuck Berry than he is Keith. I think he's only the Keith of a very specific time, like Jimmy Miller, the Beggar's Banquet time, really. I think the Keith stuff tends to get a little overstated because he really is way more Chuck Berry, and especially playing with pickup bands, like throwing all sorts of key changes around, shortening songs, throwing stuff out. I think Chuck Berry is a lot more the model than Keith, honestly. I think it's just that people get so fixated on the Keith thing. But yeah, so at any rate, Diary of a Lover is an absolute classic. A wonderful, wonderful, wonderful song. Now, we're going to start to touch upon... No, fuck that. No, never mind. 1982, October. Johnny is then at Downtown Studios in Boston, Massachusetts. And that is where, back with Billy Rogers, and it's just a duo because Johnny is doing the bass. They do another version of In Cold Blood, so Jimmy Miller is still around for this. I don't think this version is as successful as the version that you would have heard. It's a little busier in terms of the mix, and it's more sort of cluttered, and I don't think it's as successful. It's perfectly fine if this was the only version that you knew. You'd be like, hey, wait a second, that's awesome. There's nothing wrong with it. I just think that compared to the version that you have heard, this one is not as good. However, the second song recorded is Just Another Girl. Now, this is the definitive version of Just Another Girl. God damn it. So if you have not heard this, this is the version that you want to hear. This is where the music really comes alive. It is very much of a piece with Hoodoo Voodoo and that version of Endless Party, and would make a ragingly perfect complement to the electric side of a prospective 1982 Johnny Thunders album. This is the definitive version of Just Another Girl. It's awesome. Johnny commands with his guitar. He fucking bobs and weaves. Like, it's so amazing. And just that taunting theme that he just keeps recurring. This taunt, this glare, this sneer, the snarl of it. Oh, it all comes out in that glorious fucking burst of expressiveness of that perfect fucking electric guitar playing. Just like plugged into the fucking right hand of God. Like, oh my God, I love his fucking playing. So this is the version, and this caps off. I'm telling you, you take that second version of Diary of a Lover, the January stuff, you like take mix and match. I'm telling you, there is a masterpiece here. It's just unfortunate that it didn't all come together and become one. But again, the cumulative, when you're listening to the multiple takes of the songs and the stuff that doesn't get used, you can just really, and then plus the live stuff, which we're moments away from, you can really, really revel in it. It's fucking glorious. It's what you want and need from rock and roll. That's why it's the world's greatest art form. So yeah, it's obscure, but this is what you want. I'm telling you, this is what you want, okay? Rich doesn't fucking steer you wrong. You know that. And then rounding out that disc, by the way, is we have from an unknown recording, though it sounds suspiciously like the rest of the January 82 stuff, is the song Give Me More. Give Me More is really, really cool. It's very much of a piece with it's acoustic. It very much is of a piece. I think this one really, I think, cries out for an electric arrangement with the band. I think that if Sad Vacation, you're kind of like, oh, that would have just worked, just him solo. Give Me More, I think, would sound great with the full band. With Jerry Nolan on drums, get the fuck out of here, it'd be great. As it stands, it's a really cool song. I like it. It's maybe one of the lesser acoustic songs, but not really. It's still really strong. But it's definitely the one where it's maybe not as purely standalone as an acoustic performance, but it's still really, really strong. So with that, I think we will move into talking about the releases from this time. We are very quickly going to run through the various releases, and boy, there are many, and I'm not going to go through all the variants, but I'm going to hit some of the major ones, I suppose. Okay, so January 1983, there is the release of the In Cold Blood album on New Rose Records. It is an EP combined with a live album. This is the version that is up on YouTube. So, it is the Jimmy Miller session, so it's In Cold Blood, Just Another Girl, Green Onions, Diary of a Lover, and Look in My Eyes. So, not all of it's Jimmy Miller, but you get the idea. The live recording, however, is from Jonathan Swift's in Cambridge, Massachusetts, recorded on August the 6th of 1982. This is the lineup is Walter Lure, Joe Mazzari is back on bass, and Billy Rogers is on drums. This is a rock solid live performance. Johnny is a word that you wouldn't normally associate with him. His live performances, especially from this period, are remarkably consistent. He delivered the goods. He delivered the awesome rock and roll goods, and they were fantastic. So you get Just Another Girl, which is great. You get a okay version of Too Much Junkie Business. Sad Vacation. Louie Louie is absolutely bananas. Simon Ritt and Keith Shagnon are on Louie Louie and a version of Gloria, respectively, that you don't really notice even necessarily the change in lineups. The power is incredible. And then there is an early version of Just Because I'm White, which is titled after the second line of the song, if you know the song. It's a brief rendition, but then it explodes with Do You Love Me, which is amazing, an epic version of the Green Onions cover, which is awesome, and then the Ten Commandments, which is Johnny making the decree of the Ten Commandments of, I guess, how to be a good partner to him, how to be a good woman, and it abruptly cuts off with him saying, I think the last thing he says is something to the effect of, I'm the Fuhrer, which is pretty funny if you find that sort of thing funny. I do. So yeah, it's a good live record. Apparently, this was issued, I think, only, I might get this wrong, so if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. This was issued in France, I think, and then quickly withdrawn. And so Johnny was, apparently, they were supposed to just put out the studio tracks, and this was not designed to be an album, I think. Christopher Gierke is listed as executive producer, and the cover photograph. The cover, I like the cover a lot, is by, what's the name? Is it Justina? Whoever Justina is, she took the cover. And then there is this version, which does away with any semblance of the In Cold Blood album. It's the 1982 recording sessions. But then the live portion is, and I want to get the date right, it is at the Marquee, June the 3rd. So, and we have Jerry Nolan back on guitar. We have Tony James, the great Tony James, on bass. And for the third time in the history of Rich Talks Records, who knew this person would just keep coming back up? Shows up in Public Image Limited, shows up in Iggy Pop, and shows up here. Steve New. That's right, Steve New is back again. What are the odds? So the Marquee Club performance is another reason to get this, because as good as the original In Cold Blood live set is, this absolutely smokes it. Johnny asks for reverb at the beginning, and boy do they give it to him. It is effectively dub reggae live. Boy, incredible rock and roll. Johnny's vocals are nearly impossible to hear. He throws his own timing off sometimes because the voices come. It is fucking amazing. If you have any, if you are like, oh, this just sounds like bullshit, this isn't, this isn't how the vocals are supposed to sound, it's gonna test your patience. But if you can handle if you can handle experimental things and abstractions, and as we all know, I think I'm pretty good with both. I'm a pretty experimental guy, not really. In art, I am. This is an absolutely ripping performance. This is fucking fantastic. This version of the band is like what you want and need. And Pipeline, amazing In Cold Blood. Great Too Much Junkie Business. I Love You, one of my favorite songs ever written and recorded. Green Onions, he goes, which is really Who Needs Girls. And then he goes into These Boots Are Made for Walking. So, how awesome is that? Sad Vacation, Just Another Girl, amazing. And then this ripping version of 5 to 1, which is like you've never heard it before. It's awesome. Great Big Kiss. Now it is titled Just Because I'm White. Chinese Rocks, and then it just gets into Johnny's just throwing out bits of songs. It's a lot of fun. They sort of run out of tunes, and it's just really, really cool. So there's Jet Boy, there's Pipeline again, You Can't Put Your Arms Around a Memory, Alone in a Crowd. He does London Boys. They do London Boys. How cool is that? And then it closes with Bebop-A-Lula, a just deconstructed, again, Crampsian version of Bebop-A-Lula. Awesome. So you need to have this. There is, of course, because of course there is, also, God help us all, the In Cold Blood. The In Cold Blood EP, which came out in 1984 on New Rose Records, which is similar artwork to this. J.B. Mondino, it's same photo session, so this uncropped version is the cover of the EP, which is In Cold Blood, Just Another Girl, Green Onions, Diary of a Lover, and Look in My Eyes. Do you need it? No. Is it redundant? Yeah. So also, because of course there is the Diary of a Lover EP, released on PVC Records in 1983. I'll be honest, this is where I sort of gave up a little bit. We have Green Onions, Look in My Eyes, Just Another Girl, In Cold Blood, Diary of a Lover, and Endless Party, yes. And this is slightly different mixes of the Jimmy Miller material. I'll be honest, I didn't really hear that much of a difference. Maybe I'm just an idiot who doesn't understand rock and roll, but I just didn't really hear it. Also, the acoustic recordings are definitely the harbinger of the next year. the Hurt Me album, recorded in October and November of 1983. Someday I will review that, but I just sort of wanted to throw that in here somewhere. And then, of course, there is this, which is where you have probably heard all the Jimmy Miller material. The Too Much Junkie Business, also known as the new Too Much Junkie Business. This was originally came out on Roar on cassette, March 7th of 1983. Roar, the cassette-only label, Reach Out International Records. It was originally re-released. It was subsequently then re-released in 1999, which is what I have as the new Too Much Junkie Business. So we have Hoodoo Voodoo, In Cold Blood, Just Another Girl, and Diary of a Lover. These mixes are objectively terrible and led me to think that this material from this period was substandard for many, many years. Why did I hold on to this and why did I enjoy it? Well, the rest of the material. Plus, Johnny does spoken interjections, which are very humorous and very, very charming. He was a charming son of a bitch. But the Jimmy Miller material is done a huge, huge disservice on this release. It just sounds fucking awful. The mixes make absolutely no sense. So if you've only ever heard this, for the love of God, go and seek this out, because truly the music comes alive. These mixes are very, 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 very not good. And no, this isn't a thing of like, oh, they're so rock and roll, you can't get it, man. This isn't like the fucking Iggy and Bowie mix of Raw Power. These just sound fucked up and give you no real indication as to how vibrant and awesome the music actually is and how good the songs are, even if they are open-ended and jam-based. Live stuff is recorded, there's a bunch of live stuff on here recorded from the Peppermint Lounge, and I couldn't find a definitive date. Johnny played a couple shows at the Peppermint Lounge in 1982, including one from January. I am going to say that this is from September the 10th of 1982. I'm going with that. I couldn't find a definitive date, but that's what my ears are telling me. If you know what it should actually be, let me know in the comments. But we get a great version. Oh, and there's also Who Needs Girls. But we get a great version of Get Off the Phone, the definitive live version of Too Much Junkie Business, which, again, if you were going to do like a lot of people where they incorporate live material onto studio albums, like the Misfits putting Mommy, Can I Go Out and Kill Tonight on Walk Among Us, you would have to put Too Much Junkie Business on this. Too Much Junkie Business is one of the definitive songs of Johnny Thunders' career, and yes, it was written by Walter Lure. Johnny played fast and loose with the songwriting credits, including which he does on here, which he incorporates Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and my man Waldo, but it's a Walter Lure composition, and if you listen to the lyrics, it is clearly a Walter Lure song. Johnny wouldn't write like a storyline like that and then sort of have like fourth wall breaking commentary on the story. Like, Johnny's not going to do that. He doesn't think that way. It reminds me almost a bit of when John Lennon was being interviewed about the 1980 Playboy interviews, and he's like asked about Rocky Raccoon, and he's like, would I go into all that bit stuff about Gideon's Bible? Like, it's sort of like that. But it's the definitive version. King of the Gypsies with Gang War. Someday I'll talk about Gang War, but it's a studio recording. So Alone, I Love You, Great Big Kiss, Let Go, and Jet Boy. So this is a cool compilation. It's really, really cool. But the major knock against it is how really poor, the misrepresentation with the really, 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 really awful mixes of the Jimmy Miller material. So with that, we are now going to really focus on this, Stations of the Cross. We're now getting to the real meat of the matter of this video, finally. And that is this, 1987's Stations of the Cross, recorded in 1982. Recorded at 2 live sessions at the Mud Club, Late and Later. I forget where that was noted, but the Mud Club, of course, in New York, and this was on September the 30th, 1982. It was also filmed by Lech Kowalski for the movie Stations of the Cross. This is the soundtrack. The soundtrack was finished before the movie, and then, of course, the movie was never finished. Some of the footage and edits of edits are available on YouTube. I will be linking to those because Lech Kowalski filmed this beautifully. It is just shot. It is gorgeous in its darkness. It is underlit in all the right ways, and it's really, really beautiful looking. I wish the entire thing was out there because that would be the definitive statement of Johnny Thunders. The spoken word sections, the controversial to some spoken word sections on side 4 is dialogue from the movie, but I think it's just documentary. I don't know. It's hard to say. It was recorded at the Carlton Arms Hotel in New York, room 29 for all. We don't even have regular release dates for most of this stuff, but we have room 29. I love that. On August 25th of 1982. It should also be noted that apparently the filming of either Gringo or Stations of the Cross ended definitively. Apparently it dawdled along, I guess, for a little bit until Johnny just moved to Sweden. And there are many reasons it is said why he moved to Sweden. One of them is that he beat somebody with a guitar and was ducking the heat for that. I don't know how true that is. You know, who knows these things. But yeah, this came out on 1987. Now, what I have came out in 1991 on Danceteria Records. And look at this beautiful cover art. And how cool is that? And yeah, it feels very bootleggy. It's in this sort of like, it feels very, very, very bootleggy, but it is a real record. It is a real live album. And I think that this is one of the truly great live albums of all time. It puts me in mind, and there is a brief essay from Lech Kowalski here, where he, notes that the Sex Pistols and Chuck Berry, the pure days of the Sex Pistols and Chuck Berry are over, but Johnny Thunders plays on. And I'm going to link to this. This is out on YouTube. I'm going to link to this because it is Johnny Thunders, of course. There are variants of it, and this was re-released by Receiver Records in the United Kingdom in 1994 as Stations of the Cross Revisited with additional songs added, MIA. I don't like that, though, because they were like, oh, we don't want to hear bullshit talking on a record. But I'm going to get to why I think it's important. This was recorded on a 24-track mobile unit, and and I forget now his other credits, but the guy who recorded it is named Steve Remote. Hard to believe that that's his real name, but but the lineup is, of course, Johnny Thunders, Walter Lure, Jerry Nolan, who plays the drums of a lifetime here. I mean, he's always great, but holy Christ. And then the mysterious on bass. If you know who plays bass on this, by all means, please in the comments let me know. I'm very, very curious. Apparently, the name of the bass player is something of an inside joke to do with Serinda Fox or something. So I don't. And apparently, there's footage I didn't see where this is called out in the footage, but I don't know. But all I could find is that the bass player, and here is actually listed as a guitar player, not a bass player, if you can see that. But on Wikipedia, the bass player is Tallarico. Who in the hell is Tallarico, you might ask? I've never heard of Tallarico, have you? And the Wikipedia entry for this album helpfully links to Steven Tyler of the famous band Aerosmith, and so do other websites out there as well. They all link to Steven Tyler, which leads one to believe that having recently completed the Rock and a Hard Place album, Steven Tyler absconded from his Rock and a Hard Place promotional activities to go down to the Mud Club and play bass for 2 nights with Johnny Thunders. So I'm just going to take that at face value and assume that, yes, that is literally Steven Tyler of the famous band Aerosmith playing bass on this live album. So yeah, I don't have any interest in Stations of the Cross Revisited. I want the original deal. I want the real thing. And you should want it too. This is the masterpiece. This is what it's all leading to. And I think that if you want to do some sort of combination of acoustic sessions, electric sessions, and then this, now you're getting somewhere. Now you're getting to some core stuff. This is a standalone live album in its incarnation. Is talking, controversial talking included, is the downtown cousin of Lou Reed's Take No Prisoners live. This is desperate, dark, sad music from the Demimonde, the depths of the Demimonde of New York City. And yet, like Lou Reed, there is somehow, through the desperate need for connection and need for communication, there is yet somehow a sense that they're going to somehow make it through to the next day, and that this is not their last stand. There's a weird confidence. People noted that Johnny could be the most incredibly confident person that they had ever met. Like when he announced that he was going to be the guitar player for the lead guitar player for the New York Dolls, even though Sylvain was more like further along as a player. But that's Johnny. This is one of the best live albums ever made. It is... You have to see some of the footage, too. It's a crime that this hasn't just been turned into a concert film and that somebody hasn't gotten their hands on it and just edited it together. If there is an edit, please let me know. I would love to see that. But this, the oral evidence of this, we get Wipeout. It's a motherfucker of Wipeout. Johnny's over-reverbed bursts of self-expression that leap out of him is perfect for Wipeout. Then we get In Cold Blood, potentially the definitive In Cold Blood in New York City in 1982. The lurch, the swing, thank you Jerry Nolan, is perfect and is not confined by trying to make a record out of it. Again, Johnny, for some reason, didn't happen in the studio, but by God, it happened on stage. It's vibrant, sad, intense, and where Lou Reed, it happens with his strengths as a band leader and sort of through his ceaseless talking, his sort of, guy desperate to keep a phone conversation going in the middle of the night because he doesn't want to have to be alone. Johnny does it with just the brilliant bursts of his guitar sound. And then we get Just Another Girl, potentially the definitive Just Another Girl. This might be the best one. The part of it, the loose and casualness of Johnny just throwing things in, throwing in verbal asides, throwing out musical asides. This is what you want. Again, this also the sound of this is gritty and dark, high-grained, Super 8 sounding fucking music. It is, oh my God. And Johnny's just constant sort of like, what am I hiding? I'm hiding my arms. Like, oh my God. We get a Too Much Junkie Business, which is nearly as good as the version on Too Much Junkie Business, or the new Too Much Junkie Business. We get a Sad Vacation dedicated to Sid, which is sad but also humorous. Johnny's really warped sense of humor comes through. It's beautiful. And then we get Who Needs Girls, the definitive Who Needs Girls, which Johnny also notes as Green Onions. But this has really now turned into its own full-on song. And the casual misogyny is part of the deal. This is This is dangerous music with dangerous thoughts expressed dangerously, goddammit. It is not acceptable. These are unacceptable opinions, unacceptable social positions to take. It's incredible. And then we get Do You Love Me, which has this bizarre, almost Frank Zappa-esque secret word bit at the beginning and then throughout about cutting the heads off of women. And it culminates, though, with a Henry VIII joke, which is very funny, and I've now just spoiled that, so apologies. But I laughed out loud the first time I ever heard it. But Do You Love Me, again, bursts out. I mean, Jerry Nolan is such a motherfucker of a drummer. Unbelievable. But then we get, one of the high points of this, we get So Alone. And this is the truly desperate, unbelievable, talk about a burst of self-expression, both vocally and in terms of guitar. It is absolutely, absolutely phenomenal. And one of the single greatest performances in the entire life of Johnny Thunders. We then have a little bit of a reprieve with 7 Day Weekend. The swing of Jerry's drumming is really perfect. And it's a lighter moment, because then we're into Chinese rocks, and which is really, really dark. And this is the darkest of the dark in a lot of ways. There is a jam, and then there is voodoo dub, as I think it's listed on here. Voodoo dub is just hoodoo voodoo, and this is the greatest version of hoodoo voodoo. This is it. This is the one. The guitar is absolutely demented. Johnny's, again, tangled bursts of self-expression. He is the master. Walter Lure is great. The other thing about this live record is Johnny is hard left, Walter is hard right. And like, you hear Walter's tone is great, Walter sounds great, Walter plays great licks, like, no question. Johnny just fucking takes over. Johnny just roars. His guitar roars. Again, this is music that is desperate for connection. He wanted to be loved. Do you love me? This is somebody reaching out to you with every fucking thing they have. This is Van Gogh holding his ear, fucking waving it in front of you. It's so fucking vibrant and intense, and somebody who wants to live. You know, this isn't doom music necessarily. It's doom if you choose to be doomed, but it can lead you to life. It is not inherently, it's not like some, I don't know, goth or certain, like, some metal, like later metal, like, you know what I'm talking about? I'm not talking about like Judas Priest or something, but like certain metal records I find, like the Cookie Monster vocals, I find very grim and inexpressive. This is expressive. This is trying to live. It's trying to figure out how to live. I find it very moving. And then we get a jam on fucking Wipeout, which is awesome. It's awesome. And then we get Just Because I'm White. Is this the definitive version of Just Because I'm White? Maybe. It's a controversial song, and I know that we're all supposed to go, oh, heaven forfend a bad word. But come on, let's be realistic. Have you listened to fucking rap music? But also, I think that there's something realistic about this. I think that, I have spent large portions of my life where I've been the lone white person in the room, and where you are treated differently because you aren't like everybody else. And it tends to weirdly fall along racial lines, and there are the people that are nice to you that are sort of like, hey, like, and you see, like, you literally see it happen of like, hey, don't talk to this person. And I've had some weird, awkward encounters like that in my life. I was also in summer school one year. There were two white kids, and one mouthed off and said some weirdly racist shit in a room full of fucking basketball players, like, and he got a full-on, what I would call a full-on fucking Rodney King beatdown. He got his fucking ass kicked, and I didn't. you know, and I've been in those situations, and I don't endorse the use of the word, but I understand the core concept of the song. So I don't get uppity about it. I mean, look, am I thrilled to hear that word? No, of course not. But it's also like, come on. And also that's the other thing, along with like the green onions thing. Johnny's shape-shifting of songs, again, this is Bright Lights, Big City, which is Jimmy Reed's, which he also then works in, I love it, he works in lyrics from the Rolling Stones Under Assistant West Coast Promotion Man. I love it. It's awesome. It's seamless. It's perfect. It's funny. And then we get a vocalless dub version of One Track Mind, which musically is one of the best things on here, and has some, again, explosive fucking awesome fucking guitar from my fucking man Johnny Thunders. And by the way, what a name, Johnny Thunders. Not only is which came from a comic book, not the Kinks song, but not only is Johnny Thunders like the greatest fucking stage name in the entire history of rock and roll, but his real name, the real person, Giovanni Genzale. That's a fucking name. Giovanni Genzale. God damn, that's a fucking name. Love it. And then a ripping version of Little London Boys, like awesome. And then he does Steppin' Stone. Perfect. You wouldn't expect it, but he does a great slowed down version of Steppin' Stone. From there, we get the sad, tragic movie dialogue, which there is footage of in the YouTube stuff, so you can actually see it. And it's just drug addicts talking about drugs. I mean, that's not necessarily that interesting. Some of the fantastical stuff that they talk about, like, oh, we're gonna, she's gonna turn tricks, and it reminds me of some of the dialogue from the movie The Gift, the great movie The Gift, another movie about drug addicts, and the fantastical whims of drug addicts. But really, what's interesting is Johnny picks up an acoustic guitar and plays, speaking of the Rolling Stones, I'd rather be with the boys. But he sings it to this girl, or woman. And, it's funny, for all the casual misogyny of Johnny Thunders, when he ends it with, "You bitch," she bursts out laughing. Because it's dark humor, Did he actually hate women? I probably not. No more than I don't think he hated black people. Let's put it that way. Again, you're talking about somebody deep, deep, deep in the milieu of the underworld of New York City. The guys that he's filmed buying smack from in the set of footage, I mean, he's the only white guy in the room, So, yeah. I think, it's rough, raw. These are tough people living tough lives, hard lives. And yes, they use socially unacceptable words. You just have to deal with it. It's part of the trip. And it's part of the deal when you're getting music that has this much fucking what you need and want out of fucking art for real. And then they bring back Pipeline, though I think it's credited as Wipeout. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure it's Pipeline, unless I'm completely misremembering. But this is a tremendous, tremendous, tremendous live album. And I don't like the idea of flying in some more live songs to replace. You need this. Johnny makes so many junk jokes. He keeps saying, like, I need a fix. I don't need a girl. I need a fix. He keeps making these dark, dark jokes, and the idea that it just goes into this straight movie dialogue, and it's only a few minutes of movie dialogue. You can handle it. What is greater, like rock and roll plus abstractions? It's beautiful. Filtering out the talking, like, oh, we need more song. No, this is enough. And you want more music. You've already got, it's a double fucking record. It's 65 minutes. Like, it's perfect. It's perfect. This is an amazing live album. And again, you take this, you take what I talked about with the studio sessions, acoustic and electric, you put that together. This is a masterpiece. This is a masterpiece of a man trying to both rebuild himself while also tearing himself apart at the same time. This is a man in conflict with himself, and the conflict is real. And it comes out in the vulnerability of the acoustic material, and then the unbelievable guitar fucking, like, again, like, this is how electric guitar in rock and roll should be played. And he is one of the very greatest at it. Plus, I'm sorry, but Jerry fucking Nolan on the drums. Jesus Christ, that guy. Unbelievable. Like, his playing on, oh my God. His playing on, the way they lock in to play Chinese rocks, it's a thing of unbelievable beauty. And that's the thing. They created beauty out of this. You know, these misunderstood boys that nobody wanted. They made incredible, incredible beauty. And this is great music. And maybe at the end of it, there is not an Exile on Main Street, or even for that matter, a Nevermind the Bollocks, or for that matter, a Heaven Only Knows, or, you know, Out in the Streets, or Leader of the Pack for that matter. But yeah, this is amazing. And yeah, I love Johnny Thunders, and I will definitely be doing more videos of his about him. So welcome to another recurring character for Rich Talks Records. I have, and that about wraps things up here. I have definitely working out the next video, and then after the next video, I think was probably when we're really going to get going on the big two-parter that I have coming that I'm really excited to get into. I think that's going to be a lot of fun, and is going to a true Rich Talks Records style epic that I hope that people enjoy. So anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed this. We're the march to 500 continues, and you know, please like and comment and subscribe and all of the different various other YouTube things out there. And like I said, I will be back soon enough with another exciting video. So until next time, everybody, bye.